What were the new town development corporations?
So under the New Towns Act of 1946, development corporations were organisations created by the government to plan, construct and manage new towns. So every aspect of new town development was their responsibility, from building sewers and reservoirs to building housing to designing and building schools.
So how were they funded?
So largely they were funded by government treasury loans, but they also had money that was redirected from other government departments. So all new towns repaid their government loans, and they did really well. How new towns would make money is they would build housing, for example, and then they would receive money back from rents or from selling off property, and they would use that money to both develop the new town, but also to repay the government. So in Bracknell specifically, they used that money both to fund their development when the government wouldn't help them, but also they used the money to build and buy things, such as they purchased South Hill Park from the BBC, and they later transformed it into an arts centre with the help of Bracknell Parish Council and the then East Hampstead Rural District Council. So they used the money in lots of ways to help benefit the community. They also did things such as, say the parish council submitted a plan and said, we would like to build this recreation centre, but maybe the plans weren't going to pass government guidelines, or maybe there was something about them that wasn't quite right. And the Development Corporation would then offer to step in and for free redesign the plans, and at times help fund them. This was really useful and really helpful. So how they got their funding in particular, say they just said, we're going to build some streets and they're going to have 200 houses. They would write up a proposal, making sure it follows acts and legislation and government advice, and submit it to the government. And then sometimes the government would say yes, and here's the money to do so. Other times they'd come back and say, well, we need you to tweak it, or we flat out are not going to give you the money for this. And then they may redraft it and alter it, and then resubmit the proposal and eventually get the money. Sometimes the proposal would be agreed, but the government wouldn't quite give them enough funds. And so then the money from the rents and the property sold would then sometimes be used to help pay for things.
So you've said that the Bracknell Development Corporation was sort of in charge of the whole Bracknell development, but sort of what were specific responsibilities, what was sort of the mandate they were given?
So in 1949 it was to build a country town for a target population of 25,000 people.
Okay.
In 1961 and 1962, Bracknell's designated area was extended further to more than 3,000 acres, and so the Development Corporation's responsibilities became much larger. Their responsibilities were to plan, build and manage everything in Bracknell.
Wow.
So this included the 5 original residential neighbourhoods, and then the additional 5 residential neighbourhoods, the industrial areas, the commercial areas. So they had everything from building homes, flats, schools, sewers, ensuring gas, electricity and water provision, building bridges. Everything and anything in Bracknell between 1949 and 1982 was their responsibility, and they would overview and be involved in it. So to help build this, they had a large team. Yeah. So one of the first things they did in 1950 was they're called the chief officers. So these are the chief architect, the chief law surveyor, the chief financial officer, the chief engineer, and they were heads of departments, and they had big and various responsibilities. So the Bracknell Development Corporation was governed by a board. So it was originally 8 members, including the chairman and the deputy chairman. And then with the passing of the New Towns Amendment Act in 1976, this expanded to 11 people. So board members were appointed for a 2-year term. They're appointed by the ministry and their successors in the Department of Environment. These were paid positions, and so to be a board member you had to be in some way involved in Bracknell. So maybe you're a member of East Hampstead Rural District Council, maybe you're a local business owner, or maybe have the expertise to be involved. Bracknell is really quite unique in the fact that from its first board in 1949 all the way to its last in 1982, there was at least one woman on every board.
Wow.
It's really quite significant. Yeah. And in the later years, one board member rose to be deputy chairman. Her name was Kathleen, known as Kitty Dancy. She'd also been the head of Sandhurst local council, really important political figure. So deputy chairman was the highest position ever any woman had risen to within the Bracknell Development Corporation. Wow. And she would have a lot of responsibility. She would step in for the chairman when they were busy. So the Development Corporation's responsibilities were varied. They had lots of people who worked as builders, quantity surveyors, lawyers, painters, secretaries, housing managers, social development officer. They were very interested in the community. They really wanted the community to be happy and healthy, fulfilled. They had they were very interested in Bracknell's green space, because that's one of the things about new towns that sets them apart from other traditional towns, is that they have to have open space. So Bracknell's really fortunate in the fact they have lots of natural landscape with lots of woodland surrounding it. And the corporation was really conscious of that and wanted to ensure as much of it could be retained as possible. So one of the first things they did in 1950 was they hired consultant landscape architect Sheila Hayward to perform a survey of all the trees in Bracknell. She recommended which ones to keep and what actions to do. And they felt the landscape architecture and keeping the green space was so important that Sheila Hayward continued working for them as a consultant for 24 years.
Wow.
And she was often said to be seen walking around town with her little clipboard, looking at different places. She also did the landscaping for many of the Bracknell's neighbourhoods. She also did the landscaping for Point Royal. So lots of places, even to the modern day, you can see how the corporation was really meticulous planning, really conscious. The corporation also made the decision that 0.5 to 1% of every development's contract had to be set aside for landscaping. So you can imagine when you have a contract for £600,000 in old money, that's a significant amount of money that they then used to ensure that there were flowers and trees, green spaces, and the money was used for the community.
So Sheila Hayward was clearly really influential in sort of the landscape of Bracknell, but were there any other key figures who you can still see their mark on Bracknell today?
Definitely. So the corporation's first chairman, Sir Lancelot Key, he was chairman from 1949 to 1959. He was a extremely important town planner. He helped develop Liverpool and Norwich and lots of other areas. He and the first architect, Edward Ashton Ferriby, in particular liked red brick and traditional design. They weren't a fan of sort of concrete and the more modern designs that were coming about in the 50s and 60s. They felt Bracknell needed to look like the rest of its surrounding area, and they felt that government money should be spent on resources that were tried and tested, that weren't going to fail. And so that's why you see in lots of Bracknell's neighbourhoods like Priestwood, you see a lot of red brick everywhere. And so I know I've just mentioned Edward Ashton Ferriby. So he was the corporation's chief architect and planner between 1950 to 1968. Quite a big portion of time. So in that time, he personally designed lots of places in Bracknell. He also had to personally sign off on every single architectural development in Bracknell. So this is both things that were designed by the corporation, but also say if you're a business who wants to build a factory, then he personally has to review and approve of all your designs, and without his approval your development can't take place. So he's a really important figure. And there's Ferriby Court in Bracknell today. There's a number of other places, such as this Brooke House, which is named after Lola Brooke, who was one of the corporation's longest standing board members. There's lots of other places. There's Dundas Close, who's named after the second corporation chairman, Sir Ambrose Dundas Flux Dundas. There's lots of other places where you can see the influence of the corporation and its staff members to the modern day.